All right, let's go through a couple solving quadratic problems. So when the instructions say factor and use the zero product property, the first shape you should draw is this shape here, where AC goes up top, B on the bottom, and A goes under the dashed line. Before I go right ahead and fill everything in, though, we should check for a greatest common factor, just to be sure. Between 6 and 5, though, 5 is prime, so yeah, we're not going to have any greatest common factors that I could take out front, but it's always good to check. So I identified my A, B, and C, so it looks like AC would be negative 36. B would be 5, and then A goes under my dotted line there. So I'm asking myself, what is going to multiply to a negative 36, but add to a 5? So I like to just start with the factors of 36. 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, and right away I get excited because I see that the difference between 4 and 9 is 5, and I know I have to make one of these negative, so this is going to be our winning ticket there. So if I wanted to add to a positive 5, that means I want my bigger number to be positive. So my 4 would be negative, and I can double check this, right? Negative 4 times 9 is negative 36. Negative 4 plus 9 is 5. So I'm ready to rock here. So let's start first by reducing. So negative 4 divided by 6. Can I reduce that at all? Yep, I can divide top and bottom by 2, and I get this. So this simplifies to be negative 2 over 3. And then 9 over 6, I can divide top and bottom by 3, and I get 3 over 2. So this one is equal to 3 over 2. So now that I've reduced, I'm getting ready to slide and divide. So let's first write this using our newly reduced fractions. I come up with this equation here. Now I divide it, and now I slide it. So I slide that forward, and I get 3x minus 2 times 2x plus 3. And if we double check that, if we multiply that out, we would definitely get this back. So our next step is to use the zero product property. That just tells me if I'm multiplying two things and the product is 0, then either the first factor has to equal 0 or the second factor has to equal 0. There's no other way to get a product of 0. So now I just get to solve these two equations that are pretty little. And I get x equals 2/3. Or x equals negative 3/2. Notice these answers, aren't they just the opposite of what I got up here? Here I got a negative 2/3, my answer is a positive 2/3. Here I got a positive 3/2, my answer is a negative 3/2. So that's kind of a way to check your work here and make sure you're on the right track. But these are my two answers. If I wanted to write them in intercept form, I could write them as a point. But those are my two solutions, my two x-intercepts. So here's an example of when one answer is positive and the other is negative. Let's take a look at another example. This case, first thing you want to check for is the greatest common factor. But since 17 is prime, it's not looking like we will have one. So let's identify A, B, and C. So A, C goes up top. Oops, that's not very good there. AC goes up top. 4 times 4 gives me a 16. And negative 17 on the bottom. A goes below the dotted line. So I'm asking myself, what multiplies to 16, positive 16, but adds to a negative 17? Okay, well, if I multiply to a positive, but I add to a negative, I'm going to need 2 negatives, right? That would be the only way to multiply to a positive, but then still add to a negative. So the factors that jump out right away to me are 1 and 16, right? Because that multiplied gives me that positive 16, but then negative 1 plus negative 16 equals negative 17. So previous example, we had 1 positive factor, 1 negative. Now we're going to have both of them are negative to get me this positive 16. So let's divide these. So I had n minus 1/4, and then negative 16 divided by 4, that would reduce to negative 4. So we do have to divide before we slide. So now, taking a look here, I can slide this one forward, and I come up with this. And if I were to multiply this out, I should get this back. And now I can use the zero product property, right? I know if the product is 0, one of these has to be equal to 0. So I get this is 0 or this is 0. So I get n is 1/4. And again, I see it's just the opposite of that. Or n is 4. So that is, again, just the opposite of that. If I wanted to write these as points, my intercepts are right here. Awesome. All right, so this was an example where I had 2 of the same sign, right, in order to multiply to a positive and add to a negative. Let's look at another case. Let's see what's going on here. So identifying A, B, and C, making sure there's no greatest common factor. There's not. If you don't see a coefficient, that doesn't mean it's 0, right? We know that if the variable's still there, it's technically being multiplied by a 1. So let's build my diamond. AC goes up top, B on the bottom, A goes beneath the dotted line. So I'm asking myself, okay, what multiplies to a positive 36 but adds to a negative? So let's actually take a look back at our previous example. Doesn't this kind of mirror this situation where I'm multiplying to a positive but adding to a negative? Multiplying to a positive, adding to a negative. So I know I need 2 negative numbers to do that. And you can kind of go through the factors of 36. And to land on negative 12, it's going to be negative 6 and negative 6. Negative 6 divided by 1, this is going to be actually a really nice one because it's the same factor, right? Negative 6 divided by 1, I don't even need to slide any denominator. So now, just so you know, I could rewrite this as x minus 6 squared right? That would be the same thing. But for purpose of using the zero product property, I will write out the same factor twice, even though it's a little silly. Obviously, you get the same answer for both. So this is an example of a parabola that only has one x-intercept at 6, 0. So there's only one intercept here at 6, 0. So we have two of the same, and they're both negative here. So to close, I would go back and try the quiz again. And this time, make sure you are factoring first and then using the zero product property. So hopefully this video helps you be more successful the second time around.